Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Mickey Scott Bay Jones, and I'm so excited for our Type 5 panel today. Thank you so much for being here and for participating in this panel. I feel so grateful to each one of you, Reggie, Jay, Anthony, and Michelle, for sharing who you are and talking about your type. This can feel very, very vulnerable. It can also feel really exciting. One of the things that I have loved about the Enneagram is that ability to find folks that kind of get it, that understand me, that have, that think in similar ways. And it makes me feel a little less alone to know that this is one of the many ways that you can kind of think and believe and have motivations, and that I'm not out here alone as a total weirdo. So it does a lot of things to kind of help us understand ourselves and each other. I am an Enneagram teacher and coach, and so I will be facilitating the panel today. And though I have an understanding of the Enneagram, you all, with whatever understandings you have of the Enneagram, you have an understanding of what it is like to be you. And so that makes you the expert on your type. And so I welcome your expertise to teach me and each other and everyone else about a little bit more about what it means to be a type 5. So I'm going to start us off with a little centering exercise, just so we can completely arrive together. And so I will just invite you to get comfortable in your seat, adjust in whatever way you need to. I know I need to adjust a little bit. My body is already having reactions. I'm sweaty. I'm feeling, like my body's trying to come up and have more energy. And so I just want to invite us to find some stillness in our bodies. And you can do that however you like. You don't have to close your eyes. If you'd like to, you're welcome to. If you want to just relax your gaze, however that works for you. I'm going to close my eyes. So. I just invite you to notice your breathing, wherever it is. There's no right or wrong. Wherever you are today is not bad or wrong. It just is. So I invite you to just notice yourself. Noticing all of the wisdom that you carry in your body. The wisdom that you carry in your heart. And the wisdom that you carry in your thinking mind. The self-knowing. Your emotions. The knowing that lives inside your bones. We bring all of that and all of who we are into this conversation and show up in the best way for us today. And taking another breath, we reorient ourselves back to one another in this space online and open our eyes and reconnect across our screen. So thank you for joining me in that. Pull up my notes here. So I am going to first just offer a little bit about type fives. And then we will broaden our understanding by hearing from each of you panelists, who are really, like I said, the experts on your type. So, like I said, we're talking about type 5 today, and type 5 is known as the observer or the scholar, or sometimes even a sage. That's probably my personal favorite title. And this type, when we think of the observer, the scholar, the sage, think kind of gatherer of wisdom or even reclusive guru, is motivated by the need to conserve and protect their resources of time and energy and attention. The attention of this type is focused on detached observing and navigating the intrusion of a demanding world. Type 5s tend to be non-demanding, minimalist. They aim to be self-sufficient. They are very thoughtful and analytical. Type 5s gather information and data and value being competent and knowledgeable about whatever they are doing or talking about. Type 5s can be private, very private. Some might even say overly private. They can be seen as withholding and detached. They might rather observe than participate in order to gather more information, but they live in this very rich mental space. Sometimes might even consider themselves information junkies or just experts on a particular subject, or sometimes many subjects. They tend to be good at compartmentalizing. So, they're able to put things in specific places and can set aside their feelings to process later, sometimes alone or just with enough time from the experience. As a way of protecting themselves, as a way of protecting that you all do, people with 5 as their dominant personality type sometimes learn to kind of draw into their little turtle shell. That could be physical isolation, right? This, like, if I'm alone, no one can hurt me. Or that knowledge shell. If I know all there is to know about something, then I won't be surprised and hurt. So type 5 with awareness can learn that their bodies and heart, their emotions carry wisdom as well. And they can tap into that life force safely as a way to know and be competent in relationships, and connect with others in ways that don't suck all their energy out, and might even give them some energy and useful information. Although type 5s can live in their heads, part of their journey can include reconnecting the head and the heart and the body, and using some of the energy for heart and body things. As they examine the type 5 belief that obtaining self-sufficiency will free them from needing others, they can develop other relationships to having needs and to being needed. Learning to maintain their personal boundaries while still engaging the world, being in the moment without needing to have a conclusion or analysis can also unlock more expansiveness for the type. The strengths of the type 5 include the ability to be perceptive, thoughtful, respectful, self-reliant, and calm, even in the most difficult situations. And of course, we all experience some traits of the type 5, but the panelists here today know what it's like to experience this as their dominant type. So, as I was describing the type 5, some things may have popped out as, places of deep resonance for you. There may be other things that you're like, no, that doesn't really work for me. You probably have other descriptions and understanding of type 5 that you're working from. And so with that, I would like to begin asking you all some questions, and starting with, how did you know that you were a type 5? What was it about the description or how maybe you've talked to other fives. What was it about type 5 that really resonated with you and helped you understand that that's the type that you lead with? So is there anybody who would like to start? Because I can just call on somebody.
I don't mind starting.
Okay, thanks, Anthony.
I actually have not done much work with Enneagram, but my wife and I and my son and daughter-in-law bought a book. I don't remember what it's called, and took a test, and of course then reviewed. I was the only 5 of the 4 of us, and so then I reviewed sort of their description, and I think one of the most telling parts of their description, which you didn't really touch on much. Well, you talked about this idea of collecting information and that sort of thing. But for me, part of my 5-ness is collecting more than information, but it is collecting resources. I don't collect sentimental things. I collect things that I need, that I think I might need, that to build that. I like the you talked about self-sufficiency, but to build that self-sufficiency. So if something comes along, I've got something to deal with that. I'm sitting right now in a small room that is packed with books. My grandchildren come in and call it a library. It is stacks of books on shelves and in boxes, and people always ask that question, well, have you read them all? Well, of course I've not read them all. That's not the point. The point is to have them here in case I need them, not to be sure I read them all. So that's my starter. That's my opening salvo.
Thanks, Anthony. Yes, I also love books, and I have not read them all, but I keep purchasing them. It's that, there's something about that hunger for information, Some people will call it like a hoarding of information, but, to me, hoarding's judgy. I would prefer to think of it as like, again, this collection, right? Like there are times when maybe you might need that information in the future, and it's already there at your fingertips, So that is something that can really feel like a core desire of a type 5. Michelle, how about you?
Ooh, we're calling names now. Okay.
Don't be shy now.
I found out that I was a type 5 through clinical pastoral education. And it's kind of wild because I'd been typed as a 9 for a long time, which didn't really resonate with me. But I was like, hadn't studied through it all and hadn't done any assessments. But in CPE, I had to do do a few assessments and found out. And there were a couple of things that stood out, like being calm in chaos, of course, working in a hospital, and taking calls in the ED that's me, and tend not to lose it in chaos. And one of the things it said, and it's a little deeper, and one of the things it said was could be having overbearing parents could really push a 5 into kind of more into themselves, into their inner world. And that resonated with me. And I was like, ooh, they're reading my story out of that. And so it was that, and a rich inner life I always had as a kid. I did a lot of writing and reading. I was really, really to myself, still am. I heard you say something about a recluse, and I was like, more like a hermit. I mean, I come out sometimes. But I enjoy it. I look for ways to preserve my energy. So there was just a lot in a number 5's assessment. To kind of piggyback a little bit on Anthony, I I collect information and things both sentimental and what I think I might need. I do both. And that could not be a 5 thing, but definitely the information. I'm always really hungry for knowledge and finding out certain things, and some stuff that I may never use, but it piques my interest. And one other thing is seeming like I'm withholding when I'm really observing and a little more to myself. But it seems like it's hard to get to know me. So that's definitely a 5 trait that I have.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, when you said the thing about parents, when we talk about type structure, right, we identify with our personality because our type structure is really kind of that ego structure that grows up around the core of who we really are. And so sometimes people, when they're learning their type, will see these descriptions and they talk about, childhood wound or, anything that happened in your childhood. And so, it's not necessarily that bad stuff happened to you. I mean, we all have a lot of things that happen to us, but it is in dealing with the world as it is that type structure forms, right? And we have strategies, ways that we learn to protect ourselves, ways that we learn to survive. And so, you have experienced that type 5, strategies of, ways that you learn to protect yourself by, guarding yourself, by being able to retreat into knowledge, to a rich inner world. I mean, when I think of it that way, about this rich inner world that 5s cultivate, that is so beautiful to me. This imagination, especially that you're able to continue it through adulthood. I feel like so many of us lose our rich inner worlds that maybe as children, like I remember I used to play under my dining room table and had all these characters that I played with, and that I feel like a lot of times I don't have access to that anymore. So I find kind of a jealousy of that rich inner world that you have as a type 5, where there's always stuff going on in there. And there was one other thing that I wanted to say something about, but now I can't remember. So we'll get back to it. I'm sure it will come up again. So that was very rich.
If I can say one more thing.
Yes, please.
One of what you said about kind of like our core selves and like Enneagram, like ego, like building up around that. And I've heard it put that the Myers-Briggs is our core, and the Enneagram is how we express it. It's like Myers-Briggs is our nature, and the Enneagram is kind of like how we react to how we were nurtured.
Yeah, there are people that I've taken one course on that. There are people that are good at combining these systems, so that you can kind of use the information that you get from different ones to kind of, know yourself. And there's always exciting work being done around that. So, I think it's however you understand it or whatever you use, it's just nice that you can understand that it doesn't just stop with your type structure, right? There is a core to you that is beyond your personality type. And so you're not stuck in type. You don't have to, feel like that's all there is to you. It's really about learning about your type structure so you can learn to relax it and have more choice in your thoughts and your actions. So thanks for bringing that aspect up as well. Okay, Jay, Reggie, either one of you want to jump in next?
I'll go.
Stand up. Okay.
Yeah, problem. So I've was first tested for Enneagram probably about 8 years ago. I was forced to take the test. It was part of an accountability process that I was going through at the time. And so once the results came in, I actually initially resonated because of reading the description about the 5 under stress. So definitely resonated with where I was at that point in my life. And so it's kind of then backing into like what's the core structure. And so some of the things that have been said today that I think have been kind of a pattern throughout my life. I think I'm less quote unquote reclusive now as I get older, but definitely growing up, was always, I shared a bedroom with my little brother till we were like 12. And then as soon as I had my own bedroom, it's like, I'm in the room, I might come out for dinner, but just spent a lot of time just kind of in my own kind of private space, and it was, and I remember how refreshing that was to finally have that at that point. And that continues for me now. My home is basically my sanctuary. I've got friends, but like very few of my friends have ever been here. So it's like, this is literally where I come to kind of recharge. And that's a pattern that continues for me. The whole piece around information as well. I don't know that I've been someone who has just kind of gathered multiple different types of information, but if it's, especially if it's something related to my work or calling or vocation, it's always been very important to me to be, to feel something like an expert on what I'm doing. So this whole sense of like not wanting to be caught off guard, at least with this particular thing that I'm supposed to kind of specialize in, that's been important to me for sure. And then I think the other kind of pieces that, or one thing that kind of stood out in your description is this kind of tendency toward minimalism. I don't know that has, I think that's been kind of a gradual thing. Definitely right now, I'm actually intentionally a minimalist. Like that's an actual kind of part of my lifestyle now. But I think that there's always been this interest and kind of need for more simplicity. I'm not someone who likes a lot of clutter, for instance. And even, I'm starting to notice things even with like now with like wardrobe, just like the simpler I can keep it. What I find is that it is a way of, to that point around kind of preserving energy. If I've got to spend less energy thinking about things like what I'm wearing on a daily basis, it gives more space for me to kind of really attend to other parts of my life that need that kind of energy. So I'll just leave it at that for now, and look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thanks, Reggie. Yeah, you're just unfolding more there about the type with, the concentration on preserving energy and kind of, being more minimalist, right? Those are also things that come up when we talk about type 5. Jay, what about you? What resonates with you about that? Yeah.
A lot of what Anthony and Michelle and Reggie shared, and from your initial description, a lot of that resonates with me for sure. To your question of how I learned that I lead with the 5 type structure, I did a typing interview with someone who was also doing their certification in the narrative tradition and did not have a lot of experience with the Enneagram before that. She proposed the 5, suggested it, and I read up on it and read up on some of the other types, and it was very clear cut. There's no question. There are certainly elements of some other types that some other numbers that also resonate with me, but the 5 is just, in order of magnitude more clearly where I fall. But with certainly having a rich inner life, I feel that is my experience with certainly privacy and particularity about having spaces that are mine and that I manage, self-sufficiency, all of that. For me, the collection of information is tied closely to the concept of competence, as do the resources, managing resources, collecting those things, knowing that for any sort of contingency, I have either the tools or the experience or the ability to figure things out. kind of at my disposal. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Jay?
So Mickey, can we respond to one another?
Sure. Yeah, that would be great.
Because I'm hearing things that make me think more about my experience as a 5 leading person.
Yeah.
First of all, Reggie, I am not in the minimalist space, although I think there's a minimalism within me that focuses, so I gather all these things, but then I focus on what I need to focus on. So there's that sense of it. But the other thing, and this is for all of you from that original description, when the word recluse did not sound right to me, but Reggie, as you were talking, and also Jay, as you were talking, I remembered that, and see, I've lived a long time. I think I've lived longer than anyone else here. And it took me a while to remember that as a child, I was very reclusive, is a little still strong, but I kept to myself. I was in a book, I was doing jigsaw puzzles, but I have 3 siblings. I'm in the middle, if you can do that math. But I really wanted to just do my thing. And then much later in life, in my mid-30s, I married a woman who had 4 children already. And my bedroom was my sanctuary. In fact, our bed was my sanctuary. And then those 4 children gave us 12 grandchildren who are allowed into my inner sanctum in a way that no one else is. I mean, it's my wife and me and the grandchildren. I don't want anyone else in my bedroom at any time. No, it's just, so there's still that sense of, I need, no matter how many people are in the home at a time, I need my space. Give me my space. I have to have something, even if it's just the bed in our room.
Yeah, thank you for that, Anthony. And I of course am coming to these descriptions with my lens. So sometimes words that I might use might not resonate with you. And I think we have connotations to certain words, like, to me, recluse is kind of like mysterious and like you pull away up into the mountains and, and with like this idea of being a guru, it's like people have to come to you. You're not going to be going out and being like, now I have all this information. But if they come to you, it's like, wow, you have all this stuff inside of you, but people actually have to kind of come to you for that, which is special. And Michelle, you kind of touched on that, how people will be like, oh, it's hard to get to know you. And it's like, I'm here, but you have to come to me, and so people understanding that, can be a really helpful way for them to actually try and get to know someone who leads with this type. Instead of seeing it as some kind of personal rejection that you're not like coming after them, So let me get into the second question then about the strengths and gifts of your type. What do you find are the strengths and gifts of leading with a type 5? And anyone can start.
I'll start just at least kind of one thing that comes to mind, and it's connected to the kind of information gathering, I think, but just the ability, because of kind of so many different interests in kind of different topics and subjects, just the ability to make connections between different types of content. And so I find that oftentimes I'm probably gonna keep like kind of referring back to work, for instance, for me. And so, I work in the voting rights space, but in order to do that effectively, I find that we got to really be able to connect that to actual policy issues that people are concerned about. And so while I know the kind of ins and outs of voting rights specifically, knowing enough to be able to connect that to environmental justice or economic justice, I find has been a gift that I've been able to bring. So that's just what comes off the top right now.
Great, thank you, Reggie. Who else?
Well, I think about that expression that that Michelle claimed about calming the chaos. You know, I just described my family to you, raising 4 children who are not my own, and then gaining 12 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. All of those families are different. All of those families, my children's families, they're all different. Some are more chaotic than others. And I think all of those people know that if I'm in the situation, 1, there is a calming effect, and 2, I'm not going to get caught up in the chaos. And then 3, they can come to me for advice, which frankly, there's not much more gratifying in life than your grown children asking you for advice. I mean, and in this case, and in my case, I have teenage grandchildren who come and ask me for advice. Teenagers asking for advice. So I think that's a strength.
Thank you, Anthony. So can I ask you a question about that, the
Sure.
advice giving? So, you know, this being the calm and the chaos, I understand that. Sometimes people will talk about like, you know, 5s really needing to balance the needs of others, right? That there's just like this energy drain that can come from the needs of others.
Mhm.
So how does that work with this? Like, you know, people come to you because they see that you're calm in the chaos. They, you know that you maybe have a lot of information or have resources to get that information. And then they come to you. So now they're needing something from you. Do you have to kind of do something to be able to negotiate all those needs or requests, or how does that work?
That's a good question, and I'm answering it off the cuff because I haven't thought of that before. But you know, I'm not in this game alone. I have a spouse, and she's not a 5, and she is relational in ways that I'm not. And so a lot of times the advice asking or giving is mediated through her, so that, I mean, hardly anyone just calls me. They call her to talk to me. They call her and ask a question, which half the time is meant for her and half the time it's meant for me. But so I think in terms of the family, I think that's largely how it's happened, and that's just happened organically. I hadn't thought of it before, but yeah, I think that's how it happens for my family.
That seems like a really great system though, for somebody of your
Yeah.
type. I don't know
I
what
wish
her
we
type
had thought
is,
of it
but
before.
it seems like it works really well. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
A lot of sense. Michelle, what about you? Strengths and gifts or of your type?
One of the things I thought about is perhaps being able to really focus on one thing at a time, like truly give it good attention and processing. Just kind of a laser-like focus. Can be a strength and a weakness, but I'll count it as a strength right now.
Yeah, that's great. There is that ability to kind of, like I said, compartmentalize, which is a type of focus, you know. Sometimes it gets, you know, it has a negative connotation, but there is this ability to set something here and be able to focus. And I can set this over here. When I'm done here, I can go here. You know, right now people are talking a lot about how bad multitasking is for us. So, you know, that 5 ability to really, you know, like you said, laser focus, and to value that, can maybe help avoid the trap of multitasking. Jay, any thoughts on your strengths and gifts?
Or yeah, I think in line with what Michelle was just saying, there's I think we as fives, I certainly can bring a thoroughness to some tasks that I think can have a benefit. Like I may not be able to go very deep in a conversation about emotions, but if you say you're interested in buying a new minivan and want a recommendation, I can do that research and deliver a very detailed list of pros and cons and what's in the market, even though I've never owned a minivan, but I will do that. And I've had people reach out to me like, oh, I'm trying to get my son a audio recorder. He wants to do podcasting. What should I get? And I've just gone down that rabbit hole and gotten back with it. And I think this connects a little bit to your question to Anthony about how to manage demands on time and energy. For me, there's a real distinction between things that I choose to get involved in, like someone expresses a need and I choose to get involved in that, like, oh, good luck with your minivan purchase, versus, oh, I am curious about what's out there and I'm gonna dive in on that, versus, someone kind of scheduling things for me, or someone with the authority or the power to put things on my schedule or on my plate over which I had no say. So I'm happy to give my time to other people when I believe I can be a benefit and I choose to do that.
That is such a strong distinction. Having the agency, Mickey, as you use, the agency to determine when I can give and when I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because then you can decide if it fits within your energy budget, or if you even know ahead of time, you can arrange your day, or your, like say you get a request from one of the grandkids to talk about something, you can be like, okay, we can talk about it on Thursday. You can kind of know, because it is something you want to make room for.
That would never happen.
Really?
Well, when the ones who actually come directly to me, it's like almost everything gets dropped in order
Immediately
to deal with them.
Oh,
Because they're not big. These are not crises.
okay.
And there is something. I don't know, y'all. I'm guessing none of y'all have grandchildren, but
Not
there's
yet.
just something about it that, yeah. If they call, if I can get to them, I'm going to get to them.
Oh, that's that grandparent love, I tell you. There's nothing like it in the world. Nothing like it. Okay, so
But Mickey, your point is
yes.
still made.
Yeah.
The example doesn't fit me, but yes,
Yeah.
but the point is still made.
Right. Like if you can kind of arrange your energy to know, if it's something that you do want to deal with, then that's different than somebody imposing, on your time. That makes a lot of sense.
And if I could add to that, I think
yeah.
for me, when someone has a need or I can contribute and I feel like I've done so and made a big difference, to me, that is not an energy draining activity. That gives me energy to do that.
Yeah. I wonder even if that goes back to the, like, feeling competent, like there's something about it being meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, what is competence if you can't demonstrate it? If you don't have opportunities to demonstrate it?
And if it can't help people, like I hear you, you saying that if it's used in the service of help towards someone else, then it feels good, feels worthwhile.
Yes.
And that's different than just kind of, I don't know, something random, So the other side, what are some of the challenges or thorns of type 5 personality structure? Sometimes it's easier to critique ourselves, so don't go too hard on yourselves, but what are some of those challenges maybe that you've noticed for yourself?
Okay, I gave y'all some space, but I'm gonna jump in. I'm thinking just again, sort of just off the cuff here. I realize that at times I'm not able or don't have the tools to be there emotionally for my wife sometimes when in difficult times. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I have to try to five through it. I have to try to think through it and figure out how best to be with her in a time of need. And I'm saying her, that would apply to anyone in my circle, but specifically I'm thinking about when she's in a difficult place.
Yeah, that makes sense. Reggie, did you have a thought on that?
Just related to that, and I guess the way I describe it is, and it's connected to emotionality. I think you just finding it challenging to connect immediately to my emotions. So I describe it as having to think my way to my emotions, which for me is there's sort of a paradox about it, because on one hand, we haven't talked as much about wings yet, but I'm a 4-wing as well, so 5-4 wing. So I live very much in my head, but I'm also very emotional. I'm very sensitive. So it's like I'm carrying kind of both of those things at all times at once. I tend to express more with my thinking, but it's like I can feel it. I just can't necessarily name what it is I'm feeling, and it just takes some time. So, Anthony was kind of just describing in terms of relationships and his spouse. That's been a challenge for me in relationship. Even this morning, got into an argument with woman I'm dating, and it was a moment where I shut down in the moment. She knows by now to give me some space, and we're gonna come back to it. But it's like in the moment, it was a moment where I really needed to be able to connect and address it from the heart, and couldn't. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is not being able to go there as quickly. I've gotten better where it's not as scary. There used to be a time where I just used to just completely avoid the emotional kind of conversations. Like that's not as scary. It just still takes longer to get there for me.
Reggie, do you have a sense of what has made it less scary for you?
Therapy.
Amen for therapy.
To be very honest, therapy. And again, going back to kind of my journey with Enneagram, I started this at a time where, I was kind of going through some stuff, and part of the kind of healing for me has included therapy. It's also included more contemplative practice. So I think that there's kind of practices that are in place now, that one, have made the emotions less scary. And even though I'm describing situations like even as of today where at least this particular situation, I couldn't go there quite as quickly, I am overall finding that I can get there much more quickly than I could. Yeah. But I think it's those practices that have helped to make it less scary.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like to say practice makes possible, right?
Yeah.
We've often heard practice makes perfect, but practice makes new things possible. And so as you've been, practicing different ways of being, and being more open to your emotions, and even letting them come over time and respecting that process, that you have, opened up to what it's like for you. And even been able to, tell people in your life, this is, what I need. I may actually need a little bit more time. But I'm going to come back to it. I actually am committing that I will come back to emotions, even though I might have to compartmentalize and set them aside for now. We can pick them back up, and that shows growth. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Those challenges.
I'll echo these relationship themes. Getting to the emotional core, and even struggling to recognize the importance of it. Almost having to take it on faith from people that I care about, like, this is important, it's important to me, it's probably worth spending time with, speaking to me for Jay, and just, struggling to internalize that and to turn that into action in my relationship, with Keaton, with my wife, and with other people as well. As a parent, and thinking about, am I meeting the emotional needs of my children as a father? I'm sure there are other challenges to being a 5. I like being a 5, but there are certainly ways in which it makes it difficult. I feel like it makes it difficult to be in relationship with me rather than it's a difficulty for me.
Thanks, Jay. Michelle, anything to add on challenges?
Yes, I'm a diverge here from the group and that sentiment. But I think a weakness could be being too private. Sometimes can keep me from asking for what I need from other people. Trying to do it myself. Not so much these days, but I can see it in my past of doing that, of being that private, that I don't get certain needs met. So I'll say that as a weakness if it's taken to an extreme. I will say, as someone who works in chaplaincy, I can't be cut off emotionally or like hindered emotionally because I won't be able to do my job. And so maybe that's one of my areas of expertise, because I'll dig down deep.
Mm-hmm.
I'll dig down deep. I'll ask the tough questions, and I'll just sit in your mess and not try to fix it. So, yeah.
Now, Michelle, do you think that that 5 ability to compartmentalize allows you to kind of be with people emotionally? Like, as a chaplain, you come into a room, a hospital room, and they are maybe going through the thick of it. You're in a different emotional space, but you have to deal with what's in the room, and do you feel like maybe that something that sometimes can feel like a challenge is actually a strength when you're dealing with, you go room to room to room, you have different emotions. You might have one that is death, and the next one, they just had a baby. Like, you know what I'm saying? Do you think that might kind of make it kind of a superpower for you in a way because of the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's momentary, if I can say, to compartmentalize those things so that I can do my job and be with people completely when I'm with them. That's part of the observant part, and being completely, present. But I'll take these things out of their compartments, because if I don't do it later, I'll end up shoving them into places and not dealing with them or addressing how I felt about it, and they'll turn into something else later. Yeah. So I have to, when I'm done, I have to go back to those spaces and say, okay, what was I dealing with here? What was I feeling in this moment? And allow myself to feel it, or eventually it's gonna tear me up.
Yeah, I've actually heard it described that, and I think you mentioned this, Reggie, that you are sensitive. Like, some people will teach that 5s actually have kind of a very sensitive nervous system. Like, they're the sensitive nervous system of the Enneagram. And I mean that in like this kind of, maybe it's the observer thing. You're very aware of everything, the noises, the smells, the people in the room, the like, it's just you observe, you're getting all of that. And so also like absorbing it, you know, you're doing a lot of negotiation around all the stimuli, you know. And that sometimes because you're not loud about it, maybe people don't understand that you're doing a lot of work on the inside to deal with all the things. And that just came up for me while you were talking, Michelle. So I don't know if that's something that resonates with y'all, but I kind of, it for me brings a lot of respect for the 5, because I'm like, oh, I see there's a lot going on that I can't see. You know, it may not be the flashy outside, but there is just a lot going on that we need to respect and make room for. So as we wrap up, because we only have a few more minutes, for me, I really believe that one of the key things that the Enneagram should help us do, or when it, maybe the gifts, is that it can help us have more empathy for one another, and actually have more kindness and even love towards one another. And so I'd love for you to offer something about what other types can do to love a type 5 well, or to have more empathy for type 5s. Like, what do people maybe need to know or understand, or what do you know that you need from people or that's helpful to kind of love you well as who you are?
Well, in the silence, Mickey, if you'll permit me, I'm going to answer a related question, but not at all that question. When you mentioned empathy, I started thinking about other types, and I mentioned that I took this test, the Enneagram, from a book with my spouse and my son and his girlfriend. And I'm just going to say, you don't know who these people are, but it gave me empathy for them just to hear, knowing specifically that they enter the world and walk through the world in ways that are completely different from the way that I do. I knew that intellectually, but to hear specifically their types and what they were, and for one of the 3 of them, this person has been difficult in the family, and just hearing that person's type and that there are other folks like that person gave me much more empathy for that person.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is really powerful, I think, about doing this work and doing it in community, in families. It can just, that's one of the things that's done for me, is help me realize that, oh, they're not wrong, they're just different. And I can actually, like, their brain just literally does not work the same way. They do not lead with the same kind of, some people are just really thinking about thinking with their heart, and it's like, oh, it's all in here for you, and that has really helped me as well. So thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts on that?
I'll just say this, and it is connected to something I think I already said earlier, but just kind of offer kind of a practice that I've kind of started doing in relationship, and that is to encourage people to ask me how I'm feeling, and not what are you thinking. I think a good part of my life, people are like, yeah, what's going on in your head over there? Because they see me over here observing, they see me being quiet, and wondering, what are you thinking? And I'm sure they really do want to know that, but often when they're asking that, what they're really trying to get at is, what am I feeling? How am I feeling? And so I have started intentionally telling people to ask me that question. and have found that, again, that they may still have to endure some time where I've got to kind of process and kind of think my way to my feelings, but it gets really more to the heart of the matter. So I think that's been helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Reggie. It feels like a simple question, but just to invite those feelings, how are you feeling, can be a really powerful way to help somebody open up. So thank you. Jay or Michelle?
I was just going to say, what was I going to say? Well, kind of along the lines of what Reggie was just sharing, the impulse for me to answer this question is to explain how people can conform to my way of functioning, but that doesn't feel good to me. To say like, oh, please behave more algorithmically so I can make sense of all the reasons you're doing things, and that's consistent over time. But that's not how, I can't really expect that. So I appreciate what you suggested, Reggie, of people kind of challenging what comes naturally to us and focusing on the growth edges. So for me, knowing that something is important to someone, even if it's not consistent with what they said last week, or they can't articulate the reasons why they want this, naming that it is important to them is enough for me to go on. It really helps me to disrupt my attempts to make sense of everything, the why behind every statement and choice.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah. Oh, that's one we could unpack for a while. If we had more time, we could get into that, what that does for someone to share what's important to you. So thank you for bringing that up too. Michelle, we will round it out with you.
I was thinking one of mine would be just give me space. Let me be alone sometimes. and yeah, just let me be alone sometimes. It doesn't mean that I don't love or like other people. That's not what my aloneness means. Just need to recharge. I just need to be to myself. And sometimes that's a little more often than not, but just let me have that. I'll be much better that way.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that, Michelle. Yeah, one of my teachers has said that, sometimes us reaching out to people or trying to soothe someone else is more about what we want. We're actually asking for that soothing, and we want someone else to do that for us. And so, actually giving people the agency to ask for what they need. Like, we need to trust fives that their alone time is important to them, and that it does not need to be interrupted. It does not need to be lessened, that is actually the amount of time they need, and that they can ask us for help. And so, that's really powerful to kind of essentially say that needs to be respected. My alone time needs to be respected, that it is meaningful and powerful. So thank you for that. So you all have offered so many really beautiful things, really shared who you are, which I really appreciate. I've learned things in this conversation. And I have written down some notes because, again, like I said, you all are the experts on your type, and I'm always learning from folks what it really means. It's always, to me, the most important way to learn about other people is just to listen. And so that's why this is such a big part of the narrative tradition, is having panels where people can really tell their own story. So thank you so much for your generosity and for spending this time together and with me today. And I will be in touch.